What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. It's Thursday. It's week 8. It's Meg Shoup, Mike McClure, and myself, Sia Nejad. Meg, Mike, we got a lot to talk about. We have a 10-game slate, a lot of bye weeks, but we still have 10 games, 7 during the 1 o'clock hour, 3 during the 4 o'clock hour. I do want to give a shout out to our contest winners. Top 3, Hogan K34, Raider Burns, and MJ O'Brien 20. That name very familiar to me. I think he's been up at the top before as well. Meg, before we get into this 10-game slate, it's a very interesting slate as pricing has started to become a little bit more efficient, but then we've got some quarterbacks to discuss that are in that low end range, which will shake this slate up. And Mike, I'm going to get to you in a second for that. But it was last week that I said, hey, I'm not 100% sure why the Commanders are favored by 2.5 against the Cowboys. I bring all that up because I lost out on a lot of money due to that Jaden Daniels thing. And I'm just using this forum to vent a little bit because my main slate wasn't very good. My 4 o'clock slate was going to be very, very good, but Jaden Daniels gets hurt. That happens. It happens to everybody. So I'm not going to play victim to that. But just your reaction to like DFS injuries, but also Washington getting taken out by our beloved Cowboys.
Yeah, no, that was a rough one as a Washington fan for multiple reasons, like you said. But I'm sorry to hear that the trickle down effects that it had to you, for sure.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I played some of your play. You were big on Trey McBride, if I remember. Like that's what was helping that. Maybe it was Mike. I can't remember, but that was helping my lineup quite a bit among other plays that we had talked about on the show. Mike, let's turn the page to week 8. I do think the pricing when it comes to running back and receiver is starting to catch up, but due to injuries and due to new quarterbacks, we're seeing like the opportunity, whether we want to take it or not is a different question, and we'll discuss it in the show, the opportunity to go low in certain places from a pricing standpoint. How are you seeing this particular slate?
Yeah, I like the slate on the surface when I look at it at first glance. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities, like the ones that'll become obvious, like you get to play Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase, right? Things like that we know, but there are some other interesting decisions. First of all, what's happening with Baltimore? That one's pretty big. And when you look at the pricing on some of the guys in Baltimore, they're available. They're certainly available. One guy that stands out to me, we'll talk about during the show. You have to scroll to find Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Which is weird, right? Like it's weird. He is $3,500 cheaper than Jonathan Taylor. And so far that's warranted, right? But like there's so many interesting salary situations. Like Saquon Barkley is almost $2,000 cheaper than Jonathan Taylor. Imagine saying that at the start of the season, right? Like crazy situations out here. Quarterbacks, several of them between 5K or 4,900 and 5,500 still that are viable. I think it's a good slate with a lot of interesting choices to make. And that injury news can definitely change things.
And we're at the time of year where paying attention to injury news becomes even more important, paying attention to weather, where I don't think there's major weather implications this particular week, but again, that's a wait and see. And as we get towards November and December, that's going to be a very big issue that we're going to need to pay attention to. You mentioned it though, that Bears-Ravens game is very interesting. There's injury potential issues on the other side of the ball too, but Henry 6K, Zay Flowers 5,400, and Lamar Jackson 6,800. We'll talk about it when we get to that game, but their implied total as it stands right now is 28, one of the higher ones on the slate. So that is a very interesting game that I don't know a lot of people are going to want to be invested at least with Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry, a different question. But let's back up to Giants Eagles. Let's kick off there. Mike, I'm going to start with you. I think this is an interesting game, mostly because of what we've seen recently from Jackson Dart and what we saw last week from Jalen Hurts. It's only a 43.5 point total. Implied total for the Eagles 25.5, while the Giants, it's only 18. I guess the main question, the jump off point for me is on the Eagles side. Are you willing to play anybody?
In tournaments, yes. I'll play some Saquon. I'll play Eagles defense and Saquon together. I think that there's going to be a week still at some point here where things are clicking and Saquon has a big Saquon game. It'll likely be at the time when the defense has created turnovers, some short fields, whatever it may be. So I'm going to double down on that correlation, but yeah, Saquon 7,600, have some interest there when we've finally seen, Jonathan Taylor jump up to 9,300. So that is where I will be. Other plays in the game, I don't know that I would get anywhere. I could make the case for the passing game if you want, but for me, it'll be just trying to time Saquon and that Eagles D.
So we see it on the screen here, courtesy of producer Matt. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith combined for 304 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns last week. Meg, that's where I want to take you, because the last thing I want to do is chase that type of box score, because we know the volume just might not be there in a Jalen Hurts-led offense. But it is hard to look away. I mean, I don't know about stacks, but it's hard to look away. By the way, Jalen Hurts 6,600 from A.J. Brown at 6,100 and Devontae Smith at 5,900. Would you consider those guys, or are you just kind of making it like you've already made decisions in other games where you're out on this one? And are there any giants you want to play?
Yeah, I think first of all is kind of like the big overarching, theme to this week is there are so many other spots, mainly at running back, that I want to jam in. I used to watch, I've been playing DFS for 12 years now. And I remember content in like 14, 15, 16, Al Smizzle, one of the great DFS players, would always say team jam them in. And that was back in the Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson days. Well, I'm kind of feeling that way with some of these running backs, mainly Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, some others in that pool. Saquon could be in that mix if you want to get contrarian. And so to me, that's not going to allow me most likely to play a big Hurts stack. But these are the decision points we're talking about. And I bring that up only to say, while this game by game breakdown is so important, it is kind of like the overarching strategy of how you want to play it. And so while I do think a Hurts stack could be very powerful, again, because that's how they have moved the ball effectively, is through the air, I don't know that I'll get there because of the priorities I have elsewhere. So I totally think the Hurts stacks are viable. I think Saquon will be a consideration for me if he's contrarian, but I'm probably going to go to other places. Now, on the other side, my guy is Cam Scatterbo. Mm-hmm. So, hey, he got 3 touchdowns 2 weeks ago against this team. Do I think he's going to do it again with Jalen Carter back? No, but I do think he is looking to be very low owned, and he is definitely still in my player pool.
Mike, the quarterback position is more interesting this week than I think any other week, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Jackson Dart, because he has kind of balled out here. He's probably got a negative game script. I'll mention, I'm surprised the line is 7.5. It's grown from 7 to 7.5. I lean to the Giants there. I'm not saying I'm willing to take it, but Jackson Dart at 5,500, would that be a consideration? I do want to point out Wan'Dale Robinson is, 5,200. And then we'll have to wait on news for Darius Slate. I can't remember if he was trending in the right direction. He's only 4,300. But Mike, any thoughts on Jackson Dart?
I am not going to go there. I get it. I totally get it. I think that the game's going to go a little differently this time around against Philly at Lincoln Financial. I think it's a different environment for Dart to step into. And frankly, the volume has still been kind of low. In the New Orleans game, he threw 40 times, but other games we've seen 20, 25, up to 33 in that tough environment against Denver. So at that point, while he does have rushing upside, you're certainly relying on the rushing upside a little more than I would want to. I just think Philly has the ability to possess the football, right? I think that they have the ability to limit possessions in this game. So, he threw the football 25 times in the first matchup against Philly. I would bet that if he's, unless he's getting in the end zone with his legs, which is fine, his box scores would look a lot different than they have. So I just think that I'm going to be off of it. I like the Eagles side. I liked it a lot at 6.5. I think this is going to go the exact opposite way of the first matchup.
That's totally fair. And that's why I look at the 7.5 and I'm enticed by it. And then I'm, it's not a bet I'm actually going to make for reasons that Mike just laid out there. So let's go to the Dolphins and the Falcons. This one has a lot of appeal. I actually think it has some appeal on both sides of the ball, but we'll start, Meg, with the Falcons. It does feel like, first of all, I should point out, there's 3 very expensive running backs on this slate that everybody's going to want to play. And I don't know in fact, let's start here. Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, CMC. Meg, I'm going to ask you to rank those in terms of your likelihood to play them. And maybe you're playing 2 of the 3. I'm not really sure how your lineup construction is going to go. But Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, CMC, all very high priced. We'll talk about all 3 of them. How do you rank those for this slate?
I think that's such a good question, because that is the big decision point of the slate. So for me, it's the way you said it. It's Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey. Look at looking into the matchups. We've wanted to jam in running backs like we did with Judkins last week against the Dolphins. We want to kind of just, who are the Dolphins playing? Okay, I'm going to play that running back. And now we have one of the best running backs in the league going up against the Dolphins. So Bijan Robinson, priority play, chalk by. I'll go ahead and preview that for me. Pretty much a lock button for me this week. But then close is Jonathan Taylor. And then I think a more distant third, even though Christian McCaffrey has been so impressive, is Christian McCaffrey versus the Texans for me.
Mike, that might be the prevailing wisdom there. And it might be because Christian McCaffrey's matchup is a little bit more sketchy than the other two. How would you rank those three on this slate?
Bijan number one by a considerable margin. Number two for me would be McCaffrey, and number three would be Jonathan Taylor by a meaningful margin. The only reason Jonathan Taylor's been good. He's been phenomenal. The price point is proving that all the way up to 9,500. What happens when the Colts defense is the one scoring touchdowns against Tennessee? Or when this game, it's so easy that they're getting Daniel Jones touchdown passes early. They're up 3 scores. There's no motive. Like, this team has gone to a point where it's not about making the playoffs. They're talking about trying to win the Super Bowl at this point now. They are talking about trying to grab the number 1 seed in the AFC. They want to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy. And I think in this particular spot against the Titans, a matchup that they know they're such a large favorite in, I just think there are so many scenarios where Jonathan Taylor, if he doesn't get the rushing touchdown on the first drive or two, could fail in this game, where I think that Bijan's involvement in the passing game, Christian McCaffrey, I want him trailing. I want him in a rock fight because he's just going to have the football in his hands, right? So for me, and again, it's influenced by price a lot too at 9,500. Like, if they were all 8,800, there may be a different answer. But when he's 9,500, Taylor for me is a very clear 3.
9,500 versus CMC, I believe, is 9K versus Bijan, who's 8,800. It's hard to disagree with what Mike just said there too. In fact, when you look at the Colts, Jonathan Taylor's getting there, but the touchdowns are going to regress at some point. And they scheme Tyler Warren touches early in the game all the time. So it's very possible that Tyler Warren gets a touchdown, Daniel Jones runs one in, and then all of a sudden you're up 14 or 17 to nothing, and it's early second or in the middle of the second quarter, and how many touchdowns are left for Jonathan Taylor and what's likely going to be a blowout. All right, let's get to this Falcons game. So, Meg, you like Bijan Robinson, obviously. Is there anybody else on the Falcons side that you like? And do you like anybody on the Dolphins side? I do want to mention Achane is 7,300, Jalen Waddle only 5,700, and Tua's only 4,800, by the way. Now we have Julian Hill at 2,700, and that's because we've got what's the name? Darren Waller, of course, who's on IR. So anybody you like on that side either?
No, there really isn't for me. It's just going to be Bijan and move on in this game for me.
Okay, Mike, what's your answer here?
I like a Falcons stack, assuming that Penix is out there. I like Penix with Drake London and Bijan, which is very expensive overall, but it's not as crazy expensive as you might anticipate when you consider the fact that Penix is just 4,900. I think this is a good get right spot for the Atlanta offense. I think they put up 30 points in this game, and outside of the Tyler Algier touchdown, which it may happen, you're getting a lot of exposure to that offense through those 3 players. So it's one that I will probably have in my builds. At least one. I'll play 5 lineups. One of my 5 will kind of be that Atlanta onslaught with those 3.
It's worth noting, because you brought up Tyler Algier, that like Jonathan Taylor and CMC, they don't really have anyone behind them, whereas Bijan could cede some touchdown work to Tyler Algier. But again, we made the argument sort of against Jonathan Taylor at that price because of how that game might go. But it does feel like it's another feather in the cap of the tougher matchup guy, which of course is CMC. Just something to consider. I don't think Brian Robinson's going to steal too many touches from him. All right, let's talk about Jalen Waddle though, Mike. Are we running it back if you're doing that stack? You're just leaving this game entirely?
I'm probably leaving the game entirely. I will quickly look and see what the computer says I'm doing in that spot, but I don't anticipate running it back. I think it would be mostly, I'm not getting any bringbacks here really at all. The only bringback situation I have with a Penix lineup is actually Devon Achane.
Yeah. I like that actually. I mean, Devon Achane is basically the poor man's Christian McCaffrey in terms of the usage. Obviously, the payoffs aren't there. That's why I'm saying poor man's in terms of the touchdown equity. But Meg, Achane at 7,300, like you said, people are trying to jam in two very expensive running backs if they can, or one, and then they'll go down to Derrick Henry, and then they'll try to find value somewhere else. I don't think anybody's going to look at Achane. He's a guy that can bust open a slate, especially in good conditions. Atlanta's a good defense, but they scheme Achane so much. I just feel like it's a pretty solid contrarian play. What say you?
Yeah, I think it's a solid contrarian play. I don't think I will get there just because there are too many other running backs I like on the slate, whether it's a little higher price, or excuse me. Yeah. The other guys we've already talked about and just some other guys in my pool. So
Mike, did you have anything else to say on Achane? Obviously your computer's bringing him up, but do you like it personally?
I don't dislike it. I'm concerned because the price point where it is that you're not catching a huge discount on ownership. I think he's just kind of middling price, middling ownership. And for that to really pay off in a big way, I think you need 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, basically. So yeah, I'll probably not play it, but yeah, probably going to be out on it.
I'm gonna make sure I put Achane in some of my lineups just because I think his ownership is going to trend downward as people start to think I gotta jam in one or two of CMC, Bijan Robinson, and well, I was thinking Derrick Henry at 6K, but obviously we're talking about Jonathan Taylor as well. All right, let's go to the Jets and the Bengals, 44.5 point total. This one interesting because of the quarterbacks. I mean, obviously Jamar Chase, and we have that. Breece Hall, I don't know if people are going to want to go back there, but Tyrod is 4,500. Joe Flacco is 5,400. Mike, how you playing this one?
I'm playing Joe Flacco and I'm playing Jamar Chase. Look, Jamar Chase, the volume just absolutely absurd, and it's gonna continue to happen. Joe Flacco, I want to see his attempts prop again this week because he's just gonna continue to throw the football. He's gonna drop back and throw it 40 times pretty much every time he takes the field. So very, very straightforward for me on this one. If you want to run it back on the other side with Josh Reynolds, I think it's okay at 3,900. Good value play. But my primary focus here is number one, Jamar Chase. Even if I'm playing the Michael Penix lineups, I'm going to play Jamar Chase in them. So Jamar Chase, first player in for me over Bijan, over anyone. Kind of a free square.
Meg, this one interesting. Bengals favored by 6.5. I see the Joe Flacco argument. I don't know that I'm going to get there. Again, I don't hate it. I mentioned Tyrod. I don't know if we're seeing on the screen here. I don't know if it's official that Tyrod is going to be the quarterback. That seemed to be the way it was trending for me. Mason Taylor at 3,500, I think is a pretty decent value play, especially if Tyrod Taylor's the quarterback. What do you like in this one? Do you agree with Mike? Do you like the Flacco Chase stack?
Yes, definitely in on Flacco, Chase Higgins. Even I actually may do some Flacco Higgins because my priority probably will be Bijan and one of the other expensive running backs. So I could see me doing, Flacco Higgins and then 2 expensive running backs. But I definitely like Flacco, Chase, Higgins as well. And so that is one of my favorite stacks this week. And then as far as bringing it back, definitely not forcing any bringbacks, but open to Mason Taylor, especially at that price point, and especially if it is Tyrod Taylor at quarterback.
Okay. I think we've covered what we need to cover in that one. Looks like the Flacco stacks are pretty popular. Real quick, Chase Brown is only 5,400. Mike, if people are looking to create some value or some more value on this slate, would you consider Chase Brown maybe in obviously the non-Flacco stacks or maybe in the Flacco stacks?
Probably the only way I would consider it would be a full game stack would be the Flacco stacks with something going on the other side. And just, do we get the 45-41 shootout, right? Like that's the scenario that I would be playing it. Otherwise, I'm going to wait and see. Like, nothing that I saw from Chase Brown told me that it's going to be great things going forward for him. Did he have 108 rushing yards? Yes, he did, but he did it on 11 carries. And he had 11, 9, 8, 10, 10. Like, those are the carries. We're not talking about getting there because he had a change in role. He just essentially had a 37-yard run in the game. So yeah. I'm out.
That's totally fair. I want to mention Brees Hall limited in practice. If you're considering playing him or getting pieces of this game, keep an eye on that. Garrett Wilson did not practice on Wednesday. I don't anticipate him playing this week. We got to get to some exciting games, including the Bears and the Ravens. We're going to do that right after this message from our partners.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah. We're back on Fantasy Football today. DFS. Meg, I'm going to start with you on this Ravens-Bears game. This is a really high total. We think Lamar Jackson's playing. Feel free to drop your insight there. He's only 6,800. We talked about Derrick Henry, 6K, which I think is going to be rightfully attractive to a lot of people. Zay Flowers only 5,400. You look at the other side of the ball, Rome Odunze's role has been lessened, diminished just a little bit. It's at least it seems like over the last couple of weeks, but he's 6,300. DeAndre Swift, we got to make sure he's healthy for this game. He's 5,900. And obviously looking at the Ravens defense, I think that's impactful too in terms of who's actually returning for this game. Caleb Williams, 5,600. I feel like people are going to want to get a piece of this Ravens side though, Meg.
Right. And I don't know that I'll get to Lamar Jackson if he is active, which it's trending that way. If he is active, I don't think I'll get there just because I have to imagine coming off a hamstring injury that his rushing is going to be limited. So I'm not going to get there. It looks like he's also looking to be pretty high owned too. So I don't think I will get to Lamar Jackson or Lamar Jackson stacks. I do have interest in Derrick Henry. Just having Lamar Jackson back is so massive for Derrick Henry. And you got to believe that they want to get him right too. So I do have interest in Henry. I know somebody in the DFS Twitter space, I don't remember who, said, when I can't remember what year it was, but we're talking years and years and years back that Derrick Henry was priced at 6K. I think there's going to be ownership with that, but I'm definitely interested in Derrick Henry. And you mentioned it, the Ravens defense. I think they're getting some pieces back. I don't know the official report of exactly what that'll be, but I do believe they're getting some pieces back on defense, and they've been so depleted. So if they're getting some pieces back, Caleb has struggled a bit too, so I could see them taking advantage. So Henry and Ravens defense are my priorities in this one. Rome Odunze is in my pool. His first look target share has come down, first three target share has come down a little bit. I think it's more a product of Caleb needing to get right more than Rome Odunze, and I'm hoping obviously that he can still be a factor in this offense. So he's in my pool, not like a priority spend, but he is in my player pool.
Yeah, coming out of the bye, the Bears offensive line got a little bit more healthy. I think it was Darnell Wright on the right side. That's why they were able to run the ball, in my opinion, on Washington so well. So I think that's part of the reason Rome hasn't been used quite as much. But also, obviously, you're trying to scheme in some of the other guys more because Rome was getting so much attention. Like DJ Moore, we'll have to keep an eye on him in terms of his injury status. Olamide Zaccheaus, but more importantly, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, starting to get incorporated at least a little bit in the offense. Mike, are we out on the Bears side, and are you in on the Ravens side? If so, where?
I'm out on the Bears side. I get it. I think it could happen. I think it could be great. I just think there's so much variance with the Ravens that I don't want to invite even more with that. I want to take my calculated risks on the Baltimore side and kind of move on. But some of that, Sia, is also because my interest in the Bengals and my interest in the Falcons. So that's kind of filling that void in there. So I don't have a lot of room left to play a bunch of Chicago. I understand it. I get it. I don't think that they actually are playing the worst defense in the NFL. I think that the Ravens are either going to be one of two. They're going to come out and look like a Super Bowl favorite again right away, or they're going to continue to be awful and the season's over. Like that's essentially where they're at. It's do or die this game. They have to do it, right? And I think that there's more than likely a chance that they do it. I think that they come out and they look fine. I want to play Derrick Henry at 6K. You asked the last time he was this cheap. I think it's only ever been a preseason slate where everyone was the same salary. That's it. Like that's the only time that you've seen Derrick Henry in this spot. So I'm going to play him. I'm showing him at low ownership still. I think that could change, but it's we'll see what happens. Derrick Henry's my first choice here. Probably the only thing I'm really getting to in the game, unless just all the reports are beautiful on Lamar. And then at that case, I could play a Lamar Jackson lineup.
Would you rather play Mike? And I'm going to ask you this, Meg, as well. If you were deciding between two of the elite quarterbacks on this slate, and it was Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, and you had to play one lineup with one of them, and whether you're stacking is a different question. Would it be Lamar at 6,800, or would it be the Josh Allen at 7,500?
It would be Lamar at 68. I like Josh Allen a lot here. I like his running back a little bit more. I just think that he's not going to have to do too much to win this game. And I think that it's important to understand what is next for the Buffalo Bills. They host the Kansas City Chiefs next week. Ooh. That is the game they care about. That's the game they're looking forward to. They are not putting anything additional on film ahead of that game. It's hand the ball off to James Cook, run, what you've been running most of the season, get in and get out, stay healthy. With the way things have shaken out in the AFC right now, next week's game against Kansas City might as well be their Super Bowl version 1 for the year. It's going to decide home field advantage in the AFC potentially, whether they win it or lose it, because it opens up the option for the Indianapolis Colts. It's truly a must-win game next week. So I'm out on Buffalo outside of James Cook this week. I know we haven't got to the game yet, but very clearly Lamar over Josh this week.
Well, Mike, we haven't gotten to that game yet, but forget about that game. You got me excited about week 9. Do we know, is that an isolated game? Is that like a Sunday night game? I haven't looked at the schedule.
It's not. It's a 3:25 game. So
how dare you, Mike? It's 4:25. I don't care where you live.
4:25. Sorry, I'm in Central Time. I'm reading what Google is spitting out. It wants to be smart and let me not make mistakes, and here I am making a mistake.
Let me ask you, Meg, one more thing. So we have a 28 point implied total. A lot of people are rightfully, including me maybe, are rightfully going to go to Derrick Henry, even though the reception equity isn't really there, but he's 6K and he could get 2 or 3 touchdowns. Like, we know that. Even though the Bears' rush defense has been a little bit better. With all that said, if we think Lamar is going to dial it back from a running standpoint, but very much healthy to play, Zay Flowers at 5,400. I'm not even talking about a stack. If I just wanted to pick that out, can't I make the assumption that with a 28-point implied total that Lamar's best pass-catching friend, I know Mark Andrews is on this slate too, but Zay Flowers after the catch in space could dice up this defense?
Oh, I think that the case for that makes a ton of sense, and especially against the zone defense, the type of defense the Bears will run. I do think he's got a great matchup. Obviously, the opportunities there. I see it. He also right now, on a Thursday morning looks to be pretty high owned, pretty chalky. So for me, I don't think I'll get there because my priority in this game is Henry, and I'm going to actually dodge the Zay Flowers ownership and hope I'm right. But that it's more like a case of factoring the ownership in.
I can see the ownership, Mike, being high on Zay because as much as I think Henry might be popular, I could see this slate kind of like we talked about those big 3 running backs, people trying to grab a couple, and they're like, well, I'm not going to grab Derrick Henry because I'm not jamming in another running back. Let me get a piece of this game with Zay Flowers. Are you in or out on Zay Flowers before we move on to the next game, Mike?
I think I am out. I'm looking at the rest of my Baltimore here. It doesn't. No, I'm kind of in. The computer wants to be in. I don't know that I'm gonna make the click, but yeah, it kind of wants to be in here. I can confidently tell you, people want to play Chase Brown, or computers are going to give Chase Brown at 5,400. I'm probably playing Bijan and one of the other big running backs. So we're talking flex at this point. And in the flex, I would rather play Zay Flowers than Chase Brown in the flex.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, I'm not completely out on Zay. That's what I'll say for now. Not completely out on Zay. Rates pretty well.
Yeah, I think Zay is one of those guys that, we know there's a lot of targets there, but he's a break the slate type of receiver, in my opinion, even though we don't look at him that way. I could see it in this matchup. All right, let's go to the 49ers and the Texans. Somebody we know we're in on, and we don't need to belabor the point, Meg. Christian McCaffrey at 9K. We all like him enough to consider playing him. Obviously, we did the rankings of those top 3 running backs earlier in the show. The matchup isn't great against the Texans, but again, if he doesn't get injured, CMC does seem somewhat matchup proof. Do you like anybody else on this 49er side? Because I can't imagine you do. We've got Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne. We don't know about Ricky Pearsall, but it doesn't look like he's trending in the right direction there. On the other side, Jalen Noel at 3,500. If all those other guys are out, including Nico Collins and Christian Kirk, I think is very interesting as a value play. But Meg, I'm largely out on this game outside of CMC.
For me, mostly yes, same CMC, mostly out. I will say it's National Tight Ends Day this weekend, and George Kittle's a Mr. Tight End himself. Maybe he gets going after not doing anything on Sunday night. For me, it's then the Texans cheap pieces. If Nico Collins is out with the concussion, it's the Texans cheap. I don't like it because after watching that Monday night game, it turned my stomach to think about playing one of these Texans cheap receivers. But when we're looking to save salary, you have options with Jalen Noel or Jaden Higgins, Noel. Really, there's three receivers you can play. All I want to say in the 3.5K range. So they're in my pool in consideration, but it's kind of like, pool of emergency if I have to. And obviously only if Nico Collins is out.
Yeah, I like Noel, and I will say that Dalton Schultz at 3,300, coming out of their bye, it looked like they were finally getting him incorporated, which I think they should have done from week one, because he's a reliable target for what I think is very much a below average quarterback in CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. Mike, do we like anything in this game besides CMC?
I don't. Dalton Schultz is the only thing. The only thing I could see just being tight end. Position, the price point's pretty attractive. I will say through talking through some of this, I am coming off CMC just a little. Okay. I've got the total on this game down to 38. I was getting Mike. Sorry to interrupt. I saw 41.5 and I'm like, that seems high for this game. Go ahead. Yeah. So I'm leaning under pretty meaningfully. I think that CMC is obviously clearly going to have his volume still. I've talked about this many times over the years. I will probably end up doing it here because I don't want to fade him because he can ruin a slate. His anytime touchdowns down to $1.50, minus 150. It's generally minus 220 in situations like this and has been at least minus 180. I will probably end up for the size of an entry or two or for example, maybe like 20% of my entire buy-in of the slate because I wanted to play him. I may play his anytime touchdown at that stake. I don't think he can be good enough to even cash you tickets without a touchdown this week at his price point.
Yeah, so. You've got me changing my mind too. And that's what this show is for, right? I like the fact that we're talking through this because the more I think about it, the more I want to play Bijan, knowing that people are going to play 2 out of the 3. And I'm thinking also 1:00 slate too, Meg, where I want to play Bijan and Achane and just try. I understand that's not necessarily like the play, but if CMC and JT don't pay off their salaries, I just feel like there's another running back that's going to get a lot of volume that people just aren't paying attention to because they're so fixated on those top 3. But anyway, let's go back to what you were saying about CMC. When you rated those 3 running backs, it was Bijan first, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was JT second and CMC third.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I still like the matchup for JT. In that matchup, we'll get to it. Scored 3 touchdowns in the first game. So yes, that's how I rank it.
Okay. So are you largely out on this game then?
Mostly, yeah. And the great point about Dalton Schultz is in my cheap touchdown or cheap tight end pool. He's a cheap tight end that should get volume, especially if Nico's out. So yes.
And I know you said about the cheap receivers for Houston too. I totally agree. I think it's going to be Jalen Noel that is going to be the receiver I end up choosing at 3,500. But you're going to need to find a cheap receiver or two. We'll get to more later in the show. All right, let's go to the Browns and the Patriots. This is another game, Meg, where I'm pretty much all out on. This is just not the matchup for Drake May. Actually have a prop that I already put in Sportsline over 19.5 completions because I don't think they're going to be able to run very much. I know they're going to try to run Ramondre a ton, but I think they're going to have to move the ball down the field via the short area passing game. Doesn't make me like Drake May in DFS. I don't like Judkins this week against the Patriots rush defense. Judy and Fannin, I think, are interesting on the other side in a negative game script as the Browns are 7-point dogs, but I just have no interest here.
Same. Pretty much lockstep with you. I love my Drake May stats. This just doesn't feel like the week. Judkins, tough matchup. So same. I'm out on this game.
Mike, do we need to spend time on this one?
I don't think so. I'm definitely out. The only one you could get me to would be Judy as just a one-off if you needed a cheap receiver.
I mean, I do want to mention, I think it's worth mentioning because we're so close with Dylan Gabriel in terms of being like the quote stone minimum price. He's 4,200. So if we like Judy, do we here's why I'm bringing it up. A Gabriel, and you could do this with Tyrod too, or some of these other quarterbacks. A Gabriel Judy stack doesn't let you do whatever you want because these running backs are super highly priced, but it does give you a lot of freedom. We're not even considering that, Mike.
I am not, but the counter argument that I would make to it. So he's what, 4,200, you said?
Yep.
And 41. I'd much rather spend 4,900, say, for Penix. That's 700 more. And then just kind of punt tight end at a $2,500 to $3,500 spot and then make sure I'm playing everyone else. So like, I guess the example there would be, would you rather have Gabriel and Judy, or would I rather have Penix and Dalton Schultz? I would rather have Penix and Dalton Schultz. With Penix, I'm getting still attached to Bijan, attached to Drake London. With Schultz, I'm getting some correlation with Christian McCaffrey potentially if the Niners are playing well and leading. I would rather do that than force a Dylan Gabriel stack just because it's cheap.
Yeah. And to your point, 4,900 Michael Penix, you're talking about an implied total that's 10 points larger in that Falcons team than the Cleveland Browns. All right, let's move on to the Bills and the Panthers. Mike, you did say you like Josh Allen, but I guess the question is, are you playing Josh Allen after you gave a very good dissertation on why the Bills might keep it vanilla with James Cook? So it sounds to me like you're in on James Cook and you're out on everybody else.
In on James Cook for right now, yes. I think that if Derrick Henry becomes the play at 6K, nobody is playing James Cook at 6,700. People are going to grab Rachaad White still at 6,400. Derrick Henry at 6K. James Cook's getting left in the dust. And I think that they still score points here. And I do think they keep it relatively vanilla in the offense. So coming, off that week, I think that Cook is the move here at 6,700.
Another super high implied total is, do I have this right? No. So the line is not 14 here. I think it's closer to 7. I'm going to confirm that, but Meg, talk to me about whether you like anything on this. I mean, are you playing James Cook? Because this is a game I'm probably going to avoid, even though it's a 46.5 point total, almost 27 point implied total for the Buffalo Bills. But I don't like either side, really.
Yeah, I don't see myself getting here. I usually like to target running backs against the Bills defense. However, it's pretty much a split backfield now that Hubbard is back. So don't really feel comfortable there. I like the James Cook call at likely a contrarian, play and ownership. But again, just such a deep running back pool for me. I don't know that I'll get there, but I think it could be a really good contrarian play. And it might be one, as you said, sometimes it's good to just discuss this. And, I think it may be one I would consider to be a contrarian running back consideration.
Yeah. And this one, Bills on the road favored by 7 here. As Matt's got it up on the screen. I guess we have to point out that Andy Dalton might start this game. It doesn't look like Bryce Young is trending in the right direction. He's 4,500. I don't think we're considering that, especially considering, do we really want to play Ted McMillan with now Jalen Coker healthy? All the tight ends are healthy. Xavier Legette's actually getting some look. And then you got the mess with the running back situation. I'm not, we're out on Ted McMillan this week, right, Meg?
I am. Yeah. I don't think I'll get there. No.
Mike, out on Ted McMillan?
Yeah, I'm going to be out on everything Panthers side. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to invest too much in this one. All right. We still have to get to 3 4:00 games, our cheat sheets, Mike's top 3 at each position. We're going to cover that right after this message from our partners.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Time to move on to the 4:00 slate where we only have 3 games, which I don't necessarily mind. I think, again, I was about to hit big on the 4:00 slate last week. It was a 4-game slate. And then unfortunately, Jaden Daniels got hurt. So I'm going to try it again. I love these smaller slates. I'm going to be playing 1 o'clock. I'm going to be playing 4 o'clock. And of course, I'm going to be playing the main slate as well. Meg, I'll start with you. Tampa, New Orleans. This is in New Orleans. Tampa favored by 4.5 points. Obviously, there's some major injury news on the Tampa side with Mike Evans placed on IR, might be out for the season. Chris Godwin, Bucky Irving ruled out for this week already. Ibuka looks like he is probably going to play, but he didn't practice on Wednesday. To me, that's just a rest issue for his hamstring. We got to keep an eye on guys like Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara, but I expect them to play. Same with Juwan Johnson. I do like the Baker side, Meg. And I would like him with, Ibuka's one thing at 7K, but Tez Johnson, Sterling Shepard in that mid 4K range. I like that. And frankly, I think with Kendre Miller out, I think Alvin Kamara on the other side in a negative game script makes a ton of sense. I think Chris Olave at 5,800 obviously makes a ton of sense. I could see myself getting pieces on both sides. How about you?
Yeah, I get the pieces on both sides. For me, I'll probably have more exposure to the Tampa side. There's a lot of kind of value plays that you could go on the Tampa side. Obviously, you could go back to Rachaad White. Yes, it's not a cheap running back play, but 6.4K for Rachaad White. I definitely have in my player pool. Then you have, of course, Mbuka could get a ton of volume, have him in my player pool, but there's also some cheap options on the Tampa side in the receiving game. Tez Johnson, is I believe in low 4Ks.
Yep, 4,300.
Yes, and then Kate Otten, of course, cheap tight end. So I definitely may do a Baker stack where I kind of load it up and maybe have a 3-man Baker stack or something like that, because there is a lot of value to be had on the Tampa side. So I have all that, and then I think Kamara, Juwan Johnson, Olave all makes sense. It's just, I don't know that I'll get there just because of where my player pool is and liking other plays more, but I totally get it if you wanted to run it back with one of those guys.
Yeah, and especially on the 4:00 slate, Meg, you'd be more inclined to do that. You don't have to worry about all the 1:00 games. You could get a piece of that. You could do a Baker stack with a lot of those cheap options. You could run it back with an Olave or Kamara, and you'll still have money for a Jonathan Taylor play. So, which is a game we'll get to in just a second. Mike, what do you like here? Listen, I like what Meg said. I think Rachaad White, I think Ibuka, Tez Johnson, Sterling Shepard, Kate Otten, all in play here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are in play, which tells me Baker Mayfield's in play. 4.5 point favorite in a dome, total 46.5 game that they want to go win still. Like the injury report's been bad. They've lost Mike Evans likely there, for the season, but they still got a lot to play for. I think that they go score. So I like Baker Mayfield a lot. My number one stacking partner is going to be Rachaad White, but number two is Tez Johnson right behind him. Tez should have had multiple touchdowns in that game. Baker just flat out missed him, and
he was so bad,
but he flat out missed him. And that's not likely to continue to happen. Baker's been phenomenal. He's probably going to hit him. I think that it's one of my favorites. I like Rachaad White. Are we wanting to pay $6,400 for him? Not generally, but he's playing like an $8,000 player right now with the role that he has. So I'm fine paying it. Give me Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White, and Tez Johnson.
Are you intrigued at all by Alvin Kamara, knowing that his role is probably going to be a little bit better without Kendre Miller?
I admittedly would have to dive a lot deeper into it. The price point at 57, I think is fine. The efficiency has not been great. I think he can be in the player pool. Certainly not a situation for me where it's like, I got to get me some Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I hear you on that. It's more, it's almost, I almost see Alvin Kamara, Meg, like I see Rachaad White, where I don't know that Rachaad White's going to be this incredible, guy that's going to lead a rushing attack, but he can do so many things like Alvin Kamara and catch some passes too. I just feel like, especially in a negative game script, we could see Rattler, who's been a little shaky lately, really leaning on his reliable targets, which in this case to me is Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. And just a lot of receptions going to those two guys. So something to consider. Maybe you want to do that on the 4:00 slate only. Let's go to the Titans and the Colts. Another high total and an implied total. This is the highest of the week. 30, over 30, almost 31 points for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of that might come through Jonathan Taylor, who was 9,500. He's been a discussion point on this show for the entire 45 minutes we've been on. Meg, I guess the question is, obviously the question is, are you playing Jonathan Taylor or not? It sounds like you are, and I think a lot of people are. They're going to find the money to do it. Is there anybody else you're even considering, or is there a contrarian stack that you'd want to play here while you're fading Jonathan Taylor, like Daniel Jones, Tyler Warren, which is 6,100, 5,500? And then is there anybody on the Tennessee side you'd even consider?
Yeah. So for me, Jonathan Taylor is going to be one of my priority spends. When I talked about jam in the studs at the top, it was for me mostly Bijan, Jonathan Taylor. And so I'll be doing that, but you could flip the build, like you said, and don't play Jonathan Taylor, whether it was 4 p.m. or Maine, and do a Daniel Jones, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren stack. I think that would be a super interesting way to play it. Will I end up getting there? We'll see, but that would be a consideration. Obviously Pittman and Warren could be a consideration. Nothing on the Tennessee side for me. I just want to stay away from this team for sure. But no, Jonathan Taylor is my priority.
I think the only one I'd consider if we're looking for cheap options, DK was really efficient last week. I think he's been okay on the season. Io Manor's been the guy that's been getting a lot of the looks, but I mean, these are not quality looks coming from Cam Ward. So, I mean, take this all with a grain of salt, but I think DK only had 4 targets, but he caught all of them. One was down the field. I think at 3,400, especially on the 4:00 slate only, he'd be a consideration to just generate all the things you want to generate with the rest of your lineup. Out on Spears, I thought he was going to get used a lot more. Remember that little soliloquy I went on? Like, if I like Drake May, that must mean I like Tajay Spears. Well, Drake May ended up having a good game for the first half, just like the week before. 2 weeks ago, he threw for 3 touchdowns in the first half, 0 in the second half because they were throttling their opponent. Same thing last week, 2 touchdowns in the first half for May, 0 in the second half. Very discouraging on that end, even though he ended up with his stats were fine, but just something to think about with respect to Spears. He's not getting the looks I thought he would in a negative game script. That's still a lot of that still going to Pollard at 5,200. Mike, anything to add on this game?
No, just don't forget about the Colts defense. I know they're expensive at 3,800, but for good reason. Should probably have 3 to 4 sacks, at least 1 turnover in this game, probably limiting offensive, they probably have the highest median projection for a defense all season.
Mike, doesn't this feel like a situation where you specifically don't want to correlate the defense with Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, I think it could. I will go a little bit the other way, though. Where I'm not playing Jonathan Taylor, I will play the defense. Just because I do think there is an interesting correlation. And I have confirmed it is the highest projected defense of the season so far for me. I have them exactly at 10 points, which is what you start with. We're not projecting them to lose anything as a median outcome. Just the average outcome, they score 10 points at defense, which is pretty crazy, over about 2 points higher than any other team.
Are you looking at ceiling outcomes too, by any chance?
I have ceiling outcomes. They're high. The ceiling outcomes kind of bunch together on the defenses because of the nature of how you have to get there.
Yeah,
it is the defensive scoring. But yes, I have them. Let's see, in the 99th percentile, I've got them all the way up to 27. The 75th percentile, which is pretty standard still, got them at 14, which is high. Like that's, I would be stunned if they didn't put up between 10 and 15 in this game, which is, I know it's, as just like an average outcome.
And Mike, just to be clear, because I wasn't sure what you said, I'm thinking about playing that Colts defense without Jonathan Taylor. Was that what you were saying as well, or you were saying the opposite?
No, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be playing Jonathan Taylor, I'm not going to play Jonathan Taylor. I am going to play the Colts defense.
And that's because that's what I was saying as well. That's because it's very possible we get up early, the defense is doing some of that scoring, and we just don't need Jonathan Taylor later in the game.
Correct. In a normal setup, you want to correlate those two because it's creating short fields for running backs, things like that, more touches, more possessions. I just think the game could be out of hand, and we may not need Jonathan Taylor after the second quarter.
Right. Okay, I love it. Let's go to the Broncos and the Cowboys. This one, is this the highest total of the week? 50.5. We've got 27 implied points for the Denver Broncos, around 24 for the Cowboys. Meg, there's a lot here. I like Bo Nix. I like playing him solo in this game. I think you could pair him with Sutton, of course, or Troy Franklin at 4,200, I think is interesting. I'm not really interested in the running game, although J.K. Dobbins at 5,800 certainly makes sense. The other side, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, obviously it makes sense. It's just kind of expensive. Where are you at in this game?
It really is tough because, again, pricing is such a big talking point. Now, 4 p.m., I definitely could see me doing a Dak Prescott stack, spending a little more at the receiver position, or if you wanted to double stack Dak Prescott, Lamb Ferguson or Prescott Pickens Ferguson, however you want to do it, and spend up there. That makes a little bit more. I could see me doing that on the 4 p.m. slate. Knicks is in play. Like you said, I wouldn't force a stack. I also don't mind Mims as a cheaper, even under 4K. We're looking for savings at receiver this week so we can play all these studs. And so Mims is also in my player pool just for salary savings, big play potential. Again, Dallas defense, we want to target it. So I'm, willing to, whether it's a stack or not, bring it back with Dobbins or Mims, or like you said, just Sutton or Franklin. So they're all in my pool. It's just kind of where I get to, but a lot to like here. Like you said, we want to attack the Dallas defense, and then Dallas offense, like the Bengals last year, this is just such a fantasy friendly environment. So a lot I like here. It's just going to be how I kind of merge it together. And I could see me getting into a lot more of this game in the 4 p.m. only.
Mike, I think the argument for a Prescott CeeDee Lamb stack is that I'm guessing nobody's going to do it because it's just too expensive on this particular slate. Am I right about that? And are you intrigued by this game?
I'm intrigued by the game in the sense that it's 50-point total. I can totally see it getting there. I'm not getting a ton of it, so that's what's intriguing me the most. I would say that CD is probably where I would go first. I can play Knicks a little bit. I see Knicks and Baker Mayfield very similar this week in terms of like my interest there.
Mm-hmm.
I like the stacking partners a little more in Tampa. I just think it's a little more clear cut. So I'm going to elect to go that route. But I'll be watching closely because I do think Knicks has 30-point upside. Like he definitely can absolutely go out there and kind of fill it up. As far as the Cowboys side, like you got Javonte in a little bit of a revenge game, not overly excited to pay 68 for him.
Right.
No one's going to play him. It would be CeeDee Lamb if I had to play. And I think you'll catch CD at like the lowest ownership of the season. I think he'll be 3 to 5%.
And Jake Ferguson is now 6K. Like it doesn't feel like on this slate we're getting there, right?
Most likely not. I could, like I said, I could see myself doing like a bigger Dak stack in 4 p.m. only, and then including Ferguson too.
So a little story here before we get to our cheat sheets. I usually do 3 or 4 afternoon slate lineups, and they're like, single entry, somewhat considerable buy-in. I'm not talking about thousands of dollars here, but like meaningful. And I had 2 of them. Last week it was only 3 lineups. It's usually 4. 2 of them had Jaden Daniels. The third one had Bo Nix. And I decided at the last minute, and this happens, you tinker with your lineup and all of those things. I decided at the last minute that I was going Jaden Daniels in all 3. And everything else looked really good in that lineup. And if I had just kept Bo Nix in the 1, I didn't even look to see what it would have amounted to. But, he went from 0 points to 33. And this is a good matchup. Like Bo Nix hasn't been good this season, but certainly a good matchup with a Cowboys team that could push the Denver Broncos, and Bo Nix at 6K seems like pretty good value there. So I'm going to definitely incorporate him into some lineups, probably on that 4 o'clock slate only. Let's get to our cheat sheets. Meg, hit us with a stack, chalk buy, fade, contrarian, and value play.
Absolutely. We talked about it. Joe Flacco, T. Higgins for me. Obviously, Jamar Chase is obviously a consideration, but because I'll likely make my spending go towards multiple running backs, my favorite stack is Joe Flacco, T. Higgins. We didn't even mention this, but if Sauce Gardner plays, I almost like that more, on likely Gardner on Chase, but I know it's questionable. Sauce Gardner is questionable. So keep an eye on that. But Flacco to Higgins, chalk by Bijan Robinson. No need to go further there against that Dolphins defense. Chalk fade for me is going to be Zay Flowers. Looking to get a lot of ownership, I'm going to go towards the Derrick Henry side. Contrarian play for me, it's looking contrarian at this point of the week, is Tez Johnson. Of all the cheaper receivers, he might be one of my favorite and looking to be fairly low owned. And then value for me, like it is a lot of weeks, is going to be a cheap tight end. I didn't even mention this in the potential Joe Flacco stack, but Noah Fant, Kate Otten, I'll throw in Mason Taylor, are kind of Dalton Schultz. There's a few of them, but Noah Fant or Kate Otten, I think, could be in a lot of my lineups as a cheap value tight end.
I really like the K. Dotton side of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of that one. All right, I'm going to go to my stack and chalk by fade, contrarian, and value play. So just so everybody knows, I kind of went back and forth here. Bo Nix, I'm going solo. I think you could pair him with Troy Franklin or even Cortland Sutton, but I'm going to play him solo. But I will say that Baker Mayfield was the original answer I had here. And it was Baker Mayfield with Sterling Shepard, just because I felt like he was going to go a little bit more ignored than some players like Tez Johnson and K. Dotton. And I think Shepard could have a really big role. So Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield are my favorites, but I'm playing Bo Nix solo as my quote favorite stack. Chalk by Bijan Robinson, chalk fade Jonathan Taylor. Now, I'm going to be honest. I am, after discussion, it might end up being CMC that I fade, but I might fade 2 out of the 3. So Jonathan Taylor would be the second one that I would fade. I might do some lineups that have Bijan and Achane or some of the other running backs we talked about on this show. So he's largely a fade for me still. Contrarian play, I mentioned Sterling Shepard. I like him in a stack with Baker, in not just a stack just with Sterling, but also maybe with K. Dotton or some of those other players that we mentioned, like Tez Johnson. My value play for now, unless news changes, is Jalen Knoll against San Francisco for Houston. I hate this Houston passing attack, but I do think Knoll's going to get a lot of looks. I was pretty impressed with his limited work last week, and it's 3,500. I need to find savings somewhere. All right, Mike, let's get to your top 3 at each position. We are going to start, as we always do, at the quarterback.
The year is 2025, and Joe Flacco is my top quarterback. I like this spot for Flacco a lot. It's just a volume game, right? Like, he's going to drop back and throw the football a ton. He's got a clear alpha number 1 in Jamar Chase. I am very confident Sauce Gardner is not playing in this game. He was added to the concussion protocol on a Wednesday. It's nearly impossible to get added that late and get cleared, particularly when your team is where they are at this point. So I think it's all systems go there. Michael Penix, we talk about Miami picking on them. The defense is horrible. You attack them through the running game. However, I think Atlanta's aggressive still, and I think that the running game continues to open up the passing game. At 4,900, I think there are many scenarios. You've seen what Bijan can do in the passing game to kind of carry Penix along. I think he's too cheap in this matchup, and I think they ultimately score 30 points. And then Baker Mayfield, a road favorite in division, lost another receiver, lost Mike Evans again. I think he just continues to do everything he can. And I think he has a few rushing yards in this game. I think he throws for multiple touchdowns. Give me Baker Mayfield here. Flacco, Penix, Mayfield.
Let me ask you this before we get to running backs. Of these 3, and I'm going to add, just off the top of my head, I'm going to add Bo Nix to the mix. If somebody wants to know, well, what's your favorite cash game quarterback or your favorite 2 out of these 3 plus Bo Nix? And again, that's just me adding it, not you. Who would you pick as your top 2 cash game quarterbacks?
Flacco. I guess Flacco and Mayfield, but Flacco is a clear 1. After that, the way I play, I would play any of them in cash personally.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go to your top 3 running backs.
All right, Bijan Robinson. We've talked about him a lot. We haven't talked about him enough. He's the cheapest of the big 3. He gets involved in the passing game a lot. I think he's going to crush Miami here. Rachaad White, number 2, not afraid, again, just like playing Penix and Bijan together, not afraid to play Rachaad White alongside Baker Mayfield, betting on the team environment, will have involvement in the passing game. James Cook, I'm listing this here. Again, I don't think James Cook's going to be the top 3 running back. I can't just give you Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan. Those are clearly the top 3. You can't go play them all together. So I try to give you something you can build with. James Cook's going to be the guy that's forgotten. You see Rachaad White at 6,400. Derrick Henry is a flat 6K. Then you've got the big spends up there. No one's going to grab James Cook in this particular spot. I think they don't put much on film. They got a big matchup with Kansas City next week. Give me James Cook, 7,600.
And Bijan and Rashad, those would be the 2 cash game considerations, right?
Those would be the 2 cash game considerations for sure.
And let's go to top 3 wide receivers.
Jamar Chase, a very clear number 1. I would probably be playing Jamar Chase if he was 9,500, just like Jonathan Taylor is. The volume's going to be there. I think Sauce Gardner is all but ruled out. Joe Flacco is just going to continue to throw him the football. So Tez Johnson. He's out there for Tampa. Baker missed him. He knows he missed him. Should have had multiple touchdowns in that game. He's sneaky fast in space. And I think that he's got so much home run upside in this matchup in perfect conditions, again, in a dome. So I'm going to be going there for sure. And then Drake London, like it's back to picking on Miami, back to handcuffing with Michael Penix. Like Drake London isn't Jamar Chase, and I'm not going to pretend that he is, but in these kind of matchups, he clearly has 8 to 10 catches, 100+ yards, and 2 touchdown upside, like every single time. So give me Drake London, Tez Johnson, Jamar Chase.
Of these three, would you play them? Are they all three at the top of your board for cash game considerations, or is one of them more of a tournament type play?
They're mostly all cash game considerations. The one that may not find his way in there would be Drake London, just because of pricing. But yeah, Jamar Chase and Tez Johnson for me are core plays. Like it's going to be like, I'll give you a lineup core right now. It's going to be Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Tez Johnson, first 3 in.
Okay, let's go to tight ends. I'm sure we'll find some, not only value, but some cash game considerations here as well.
Immediate value, Dalton Schultz, just simply too cheap for the injury report, for the opportunity. I think that San Francisco could be a little vulnerable in this particular matchup at this time, considering how their defense has been kind of beat up in that linebacking core. Tyler Warren, he makes the list every week for good reason. And then Mark Andrews, he's super cheap. He's also like 3,600 here. You bring back Lamar, you bring back this Ravens offense. It would not shock me at all if Mark Andrews is right back to being involved. So yeah, give me Schultz is the guy I'm going to play the most, but Tyler Warren, Mark Andrews.
All right. I'm checking up on Mark Andrews. Would you say Cade Otton would be, if you would made a fourth? Okay. That's what I was going to ask.
Right there. Yep.
Okay. And yeah, Mark Andrews, 3,600. So even cheaper than you thought. All right. That is going to bring us to Meg. This is where we put you on the spot. We've got a really tough game because we actually have some injury news we're waiting on for this Chargers-Vikings game with respect to the Chargers offensive line, the Vikings offensive line, the running back position. There's a lot going on. It's a 3.5-point spread. Chargers at home. They've been struggling, but they're at home. Short week. What are your thoughts here? Who covers the spread?
Like you said, we are waiting for information, but I'm still going to go Chargers. I'm going to go with the home team there to cover. So I like the Chargers tonight.
I'm going to lean the Vikings here. Meg, remind everybody, you're going to be in the Sportsline Discord later today talking about this very game. And tell us the context.
Yes, 7:30 p.m. Each Thursday night. So tonight, 7:30 p.m., chatting up until game time about props, anytime touchdowns, parlays, anything you like on the prop side. Come join me and chat.
All right. If you're a Sportsline member, you get the Sportsline Discord for free. And by the way, if you want to join Sportsline, just go to sportsline.com/join, type in the promo code winners, and you'll get 60% off the annual plan. Mike, any thoughts from a showdown standpoint? Again, it's tough because there's still some pending injury information, but any thoughts there?
Just the passing game really on both sides for me. We talked about on the early edge a little bit this morning. This Chargers offense is drastically different when Joe Alt plays, and I'm expecting him to suit up and play. And I touched on it a little bit on that show, like whether it's just the overall rhythm and timing of that unit and just getting the ball out, or giving the additional time to allow Justin Herbert to be a creative football player, which he really is when he has the time. Those two things, like it just, the difference that he makes is really hard to quantify, but it's a huge, huge difference. I think the Chargers offense looks a lot better tonight than it has recently.
Yeah, one thing we talked about on the early edge, and by the way, subscribe to the early edge as well, and make sure you subscribe to the Sportsline YouTube channel to catch that show every day at 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. But this wasn't an official play for me, Meg, but I had Justin Herbert 2+ touchdowns correlated with, it's like a small parlay with Ladd McConkey 40+ receiving yards. And it was plus money. It was like plus 105. I think Justin Herbert's going to be able to do it through the air, especially if Joe Alt is back, which it seems to be the case. I think Ladd's going to have a nice day. All right. Mike, any follow-up there? Anything else I left out?
Yeah, look, on the Alt situation, he's been practicing since the 16th. So I'm pretty good there. I'm very sketchy on the Minnesota side. And you kind of referenced it on the early edge. It's all because of the short week. If this game were Sunday, Minnesota would be pretty healthy on the offensive line relative.
Yeah.
So yeah, just another spot where it's a pretty big edge to the home team here in this spot.
Yeah, you're probably, if Christian Darrisaw, and this is why I didn't make the 3.5 an official play. If Christian Darrisaw is out for this game, I just think it's going to be tough sledding. I think Wentz will still be able to get it done with his receivers. And Mike, I know you alluded to the passing game when it comes to showdown as well, but those offensive linemen are just absolutely critical because Minnesota's already missing, I think, O'Neal on the offensive line as well. All right. That'll do it for us for week 8. I can't wait. I'm honestly really looking forward to this slate. And I say that talking about the main slate and, of course, the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock slates as well. I think we have a lot of options, but also a lot of contrarian type options, maybe pivoting off some popular plays, not in all lineups, but in some lineups to maybe get us the leverage we need. Meg, thank you very much. Mike, thank you very much. Everybody, do not forget to join our contest. It's only $5, and it's the first 200 that get in there. The link is in the YouTube description, and it's in the podcast description. Click on it now. Join the podcast. We'll give you a shout out if you're in the top 3 coming into next week. The top 15 get paid out in that one. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you next time on Fantasy Football Today, DFS.